ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another edition of Uncaged as our Season 4 comes slowly towards its end. My name is Mike Larkin, and joining me as always to dive into the best, the worst, and some of the most goddamnedest storylines and topics, the one, the only Mr. Daniel Crimmins. Daniel, how you doing?
Michael, we are doing fantastic. We had, just as we record this, we just got done with a pretty good weekend of wrestling. We had last night, which was Saturday, we had Bash in Berlin, which was a pretty good show for what it was.
I mean, you had Gunther and Randy. You had, I'm going to say this right now, every match from the tag titles, from the strap match with Punk and Drew McIntyre, where he finally got the bracelet back, from Gunther and Randy, from Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes. And
how about Gunther's pop?
Oh, my God. So we go from Cody and Kevin, which was a great pop, and Kevin not being able to pull the trigger, which was a great story. And Gunther comes out to the Germany crowd, and people just, the ovation, and then Kaiser introducing him and taking the mic from Samantha Irvin was a nice plus. My goodness.
And you could tell Gunther was trying to keep a straight, like this mean mugging face.
And Randy Orton trying to get him to do the wave the whole night. It was great.
But you can tell, like, when Gunther, before he gets in the ring, he does the whole pose.
Mm-hmm.
You could tell he was almost cracking. Like, he was trying to, like, just be the stone-faced Gunther. But, there was that part of him that wanted to just, ham it up for the crowd.
But that's my thing, too. And what I love about these international crowds and the international markets that were going to all these doggone shows and pay-per-views. Like, they just went to Belgium. AJ Styles got a huge pop. You look at just these international crowds, they're fired up because they don't get this a lot, but now we're getting Germany. We're probably going to get the UK for Wembley next year, which is going to be awesome to see. So there's so many great things to really come within the WWE auspices and the pay-per-views. Like, for me, there was not a bad match on Bash in Berlin. Like we mentioned, Cody and Kevin, great story. Kevin couldn't pull the trigger on Cody. The women's tag match was good with Bianca and Jade winning it back. We mentioned Gunther and Randy. CM Punk and Drew McIntyre told a great story of him getting the bracelet, and they whipped the crap out of each other. And just everything on that card was great. Rhea and Damian beating Dominic and Liv. I loved it. Like, dude, you could not make me smile anymore for an early show as it was, because it started at noon our time, 12:30, right? Like, for that, 2.5, 3 hours of action, it was worth it. Like, it was really good for the 5-match formula. Superb.
I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the mixed tag match. That was a lot of fun. Rhea and Priest looked like $1 million, to me, and I'm not saying, anybody else in Judgment Day is, less. JD McDonough. Excuse me.
Wow. Okay. Now, I'm going to say this about JD McDonough, since you're going to bring it up. Like, I liked him as Jordan Devlin in NXT UK. I did. I liked him in NXT.
I'm not a fan of the gimmick name. It just is weird.
JD McDonough. Yeah, I can't. And he has a big head. That's the other thing, too. He has a big head. Oh, I mean, Carlito's all right. But he's funny. Carlito makes it funny. That's, I will say, that's the comedic fodder there. The comedic.
I don't know. Just the appearance when Damian and Rhea were involved, it was badass. The purple and the black worked. They got to do something different. It can still work. I fully believe that Judgment Day can still be an effective stable. But we digress.
No, but that's the thing, too. You look at how everything has really been built up, and I love that. And I mean, tonight we had NXT, which was really good. Ethan Page and Joe Hendry for the NXT Championship. Pete Dunne taking out Trick Williams to end the show to build to their match on NXT.
And doing that whole
I liked it.
You believe in Joe Hendry? I believe in Pete Dunne.
I believe in all of them. I mean, I really like, first of all, Roxanne Perez and Jada Parker is a freaking star, man. That match was out of this world. Julia made her debut, which was nice.
I'll just say it now.
Hit me.
Get the title off Roxanne Perez and put her on the main roster already.
She's well overdue for a main roster run.
Like, it's time. Like, I would dare say Chase U, move him up.
Did you like the fact that, because we'll mention Chase U here, that Ridge, after a few weeks and finally getting accepted, then they lose the tag titles immediately, and then Ridge just goes ape shit on Andre Chase?
Yeah. That was good. Another one I think is ready to move up. The D'Angelo family.
Obafemi and Tony D had a great match tonight, man. And here's the thing: what I like about it, that fits on the main roster.
Yeah, Obafemi is going to be a huge star.
I mean, he's only like, what, 22, 23, and he's just a shithouse.
Like, you look at him, and he's big.
Very big.
Like, he is a big dude. And you know what? He's got it. Like, he's got that. Some people have that intangible it factor that you just, you can't, like, you know, you get what I'm saying? Like, you can't quite place it.
I mean, there's a lot of people that have that it factor, that ooze, if you will, that oozes charisma. And he's one of those guys. He's a big brick shit house. His promos have gotten better, and he's good. And I mean, I think the only thing really on the show that I was kind of about, but it made sense for what happened afterwards with Tatum Paxley. Wendy Chu and Kailani Jordan was okay. I didn't hate it. They had a little, miscommunication at times. It was okay. For it told what needed to tell.
But it's this, honestly,
it was a good weekend for wrestling.
It really was, I mean, heck, you could even say SmackDown was moderately decent.
For me, I like Nia Jax and Mia Yim. The street fight I thought was really well done.
Teasing the cash in.
Yes, teasing the cash in, and then Bayley comes out and as well. Like, they really told that. But for me, I think the best thing for me was Kaiser getting that huge crowd pop in Germany against LA Knight, and I really was glad to see it. Yeah. Like, dude, like, I can't stop smiling. I know we can be very repetitive in this, folks, but literally we've said it many a times in the show, many of our seasons, Daniel. It's a good time to be a wrestling fan.
Like, it is. And this is, I'll never understand why some people, they want WWE to fail or they want AEW to fail or any of that. I don't get that. The beautiful thing about pro wrestling is there's literally something for everybody. You want the hardcore stuff? There's that. You want storyline stuff? You got WWE for that. You want more wrestling based? You got your AEW, you got your New Japan, you got options. And just as an aside,
yes,
Mike, I want you to look right now at your 2024 wrestling bingo card.
Okay.
Did you have JBL showing up in GCW and TNA?
No, not even AAA. So JBL goes from AAA to GCW and to TNA at the end of TNA Emergence on Friday with Dolph Ziggler, Nick Nemeth as the TNA's World Heavyweight Champion after his match with Josh Alexander in the Iron Man. For what he's saying, he's there to scout talent for Triple H. He's just there to scout talent, but he's on-screen presence. Did I ever think that John Bradshaw Layfield would be in these three companies in 2024? Hell no.
Is he scouting for Triple H?
I don't know, but we shall see. Well, they've been talking about wanting to work with AAA because I'll pay you. Fuck that up. They've been talking about they've been having the GCW and the Bloodsport talent with Shayna going over there and many of those talents and the Creed brothers. You got TNA with what they're doing with NXT and TNA. So WWE more under the Triple H regime and the Triple H banner. They want to work with more companies.
Yeah. But I did not imagine that happening.
No, and he came out looking like the Lone Star Cowboy, just coming out there with the old Justin Hawk Bradshaw type of vibes, the JBL with the black cowboy hat. I dug it, man. I thought it was cool.
Nailing a couple clothesline from Hells.
Yeah. He can't really wrestle like he used to, but he can still hit a hell of a clothesline from Hell.
You know what? You don't see, nobody really does the clothesline anymore. You got Okada doing the Rainmaker.
I mean, Gunther does a lariat.
But nobody really has that clothesline that can just take your head off.
That snap into it, yeah.
Like the Stan Hansen style. Folks, I know that we're kind of dating. For some of you that don't know, go on a YouTube.
Yep.
And look up Stan Hansen clothesline.
Or Stan Hansen Invader.
Oh, good God.
The eyeball coming out of his head.
And Vader was a big step. He hit. Stan Hansen took him to the limit. And you could hear those clothes. I can hear those clotheslines from here, just like I can hear Gunther's chops.
All the way from Germany to the U.S., all the way from Japan with Stan Hansen's lariat. Yes, sir.
Well, honestly, real solid.
Real solid. And I mean, what was really solid is, besides the fact that we're talking about these cards and the great week and the news in professional wrestling, one of the things in wrestling that we're really going to be talking about today, it didn't last long, but it was a very memorable time for professional wrestling. Some people were still watching at this time. Some people dipped out because of this particular time period. We're going to be talking about the WWF Invasion as it just turned 23 years old this past summer. For me, it goes all the way back to, I now own WCW. Vince is in the ring. Shane McMahon is in Panama City, Florida, and Vince McMahon is in Cleveland, Ohio, and they have that big stare down. I now own WCW, which was a very landmark ordeal. The WWF had purchased WCW. You could tell that WCW was going into the bottomless pit, if you will, from those last few months, and Vince McMahon owned it, and then that led to Vince and Shane at WrestleMania, which, let me ask you first, before we even talk about that angle, what were your thoughts, again, even as we look at it 23 years later, of Vince McMahon buying WCW and then Shane going, I now own WCW?
See, I remember I grew up watching this time. I remember the old days, and I'm sure some of our viewers can attest to this. I watched both. Like, I would, watch it because I remember Nitro used to be on. Now, from in my area, it was channel 35. Is what TNT used to be on. Nitro used to run 8 o'clock to 11, which is what Raw is now.
Yes.
And then Raw would come on 9 to 11. So I would do the first hour of Nitro, and then switch over to Raw, then go back and forth. It's how it was. Now, and if you had told me then that Vince would be buying WCW, I would have thought, no way.
No.
I figured if anything, it would have been Bischoff, which I guess Bischoff came really, really close, but he couldn't get the deal. He couldn't get the financial backing in time. And you know how much Vince paid for WCW?
And how much was, I was going to say, if I remember correctly, how much was the amount?
$1 million.
Which is crazy to even think about it. That's correct, because he only paid $1 million for WCW.
Everything.
For everything.
Folks, that's the tape libraries. That's, anything that they had, that was it. It was, there was the belts. It was, the tape library, which back then, it was a huge deal. Because that was Nitro. That was, anything from the Jim Crockett years. That was everything. Because remember back then, Vince was on a buying spree for tape libraries.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he got AWA, he got NWA, now he's got WCW, then he got ECW. Like, he got the whole kit and caboodle when it came to the territories and what he wanted to get from said company. And I mean, looking at that image now, and back when you said you had 35 for TNT, like, I remember my dad was watched both when he was in the 90s as well. Like, that's how I knew it, because my dad was really big into the Monday Night Wars. 37 for us in Long Island was TNT, and 38 for us was USA for a WWE Raw, which Raw was on USA in the 90s, right? If I remember that correctly. Okay.
Yes, it was. And then, but I think by the time this happened,
they were on Spike.
They were on Spike TV, which back in the day was TNN, which initially stood for the Nashville Network.
Yes.
I'm not kidding, folks.
I know.
It stands for the Nashville Network.
Yep.
Then they changed it to something else that was TNN.
And then it became Spike TV.
And then now it's the Paramount Network.
Now it's the Paramount Network. Yeah, Spike TV, the first network for men, as it was back in the day, ladies and gentlemen. Yes.
Which, they couldn't use that tagline nowadays.
Ooh, you went there. Okay, I see.
They couldn't.
I know. I saw what you did there, Mr. Daniel Crimmins, but you are very correct on that, especially in today's social climate.
And and it was sad because I remember, when I was really young, we didn't get cable, and I started the first WCW show that I ever saw was Bash at the Beach 1994, which was main event by Hulk Hogan versus Ric Flair for the WCW title.
That's the one Hogan won.
Yes. And Shaq was like the guest ring announcer, or, the timekeeper. I remember seeing, like, who are these people? Like, I didn't know who these guys were.
Obviously, you knew Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair, but you didn't
Yeah,
know.
because I remember Flair being in WWE,
Yeah.
and I remember watching them over the years, and some of it was pretty good. The last couple years, Vince Russo, I'm looking at you, bro.
Bro, here's what we're gonna do.
A guy that books himself to be the WCW World Heavyweight Champion.
Bro, but we made it in the TV Guide. We got David Arquette, and we got the cover of TV Guide, bro.
I would rather watch David Arquette be the WCW champion.
Well, first of all, Vince Russo became the WCW champion in his hometown. I was at the Nassau Coliseum on Long Island, New York.
By getting speared through a cage.
Which Goldberg gave him a concussion from that. And Vince said he did it on purpose, which I'm sure he did. Knowing Bill Goldberg.
If I'm not mistaken, that was the triple cage.
Yes, it was. That was that big ass cage, and then
which I liked that.
The Ready to Rumble cage, yeah.
Yeah. I'd always hoped that they would put that in like a video game or something, because the idea of that to me would be fun.
It would. I mean, if you would think like WCW, like when they had Revenge and WCW Backstage Assault and all those games, you would think that they would be in it, because that was around the time when the triple cage was like really.
Those games are terrible.
They're terrible, but they weren't in it. They weren't in it, man. They're horrible.
Yeah. Those games were god awful.
If you want to go back and listen to Dan and I talk about very bad video games and just video games in general, that's in our earlier seasons of this show. I'm looking at you, WWE 2K20.
Honestly, one of the few games that is worse than that.
What about AEW Fight Forever?
No comment.
No comment. So I will
plead the fifth on that one.
Plead the fifth. Okay, so I will say this. For me, I think when it really started to fall off, and we mentioned this in our earlier shows as well, but this applies to our timeline that we're going through here. Like when the NWO started in 96 and 97, awesome. And then once we got to like 98, when Kevin Nash beat Goldberg, and then Hulk Hogan and the Finger Poke of Doom, like by the time we got to 99, 2000, it was really, really in the shitter. It was really, really in the shitter.
I think, with the NWO, where that went wrong is when you had like 30 people
in it.
And it's like you had people that like you had Mike Rotunda, who I think at the time he was like VK Wall Street.
Yes.
And
Virgil.
You had Vincent.
Vincent.
The late great Virgil.
God rest his soul.
And also, as we do this, let's acknowledge the passing of the legendary Sid Vicious, aka Psycho Sid, aka Sid Justice, aka Sid.
63, man, that bugged me. That really cancer.
Nobody knew.
But I didn't know until the Sun put it out on Facebook that he passed, and I'm like, you got to be effing kidding me! Another one. Oh,
it's a shame we'll never see that man go in the Hall of Fame and do the speech.
I think he'll go in, but his family will make the.
It'll be next. I think next year it's going to be him and Bray.
Yes, I would definitely agree wholeheartedly with you on that.
But I agree with you. It's like that time, and the problem is you had so many people in the NWO. They had an NWO pay-per-view.
Yes, they had the NWO pay-per-view. You had the sold
out.
Yeah. Oh god, that
which was just weird,
and it sucked. That pay-per-view was.
Let's not forget the fact that I forget where it was or when it was. I think it was like 98, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Hulk Hogan entered the arena with the Hells Angels.
Was that at the Hog Wild, the Road
No,
Wild?
It was a random Nitro.
Are you kidding? Oh, okay. Never mind. I was thinking because the Motorcycle Gang, I know they did Sturgis many a times.
Yeah, no. It happened. Go on to YouTube, type in Hulk Hogan Hells Angels. And it was the legit Hells Angels. It was actually them. They had the vests on, they had the cut, they had, the patch. It was them.
Let me tell you something, dude. Me and the Hells Angels are hanging and banging, brother.
It was stupid. It was stupid.
What was worse, that or Eric Bischoff playing the guitar to open TNA Impact in like 2010, 2011?
Equal.
Equal.
It was honestly I get what they were trying to do, but Like, you have them revving up the bikes, and you can barely hear Hogan.
Right.
I mean, looking at like, I would have done it a little differently. I would have had more. I would have had more Hell's Angels there. Like, I would have had everybody I could get. So that way, you really have Hogan rolling in deep.
Right, and that's the thing too. Like you go from that. We mentioned the NWO, and then '99 to 2000. Like we mentioned Vince Russo coming in. I think with his thing was he wanted to do like a restart, a refresh button, hit the old refresh button, if you will, the restart. The problem with it is like you vacate all the titles, and he was like, "Bro, I want to focus more on the younger talent. These older talents have got to go." And then he's pushing like above average Mike Sanders, Mark Jindrak, and Sean O'Hare, who were not ready. He was pushing like, well, again, the Millionaires Club versus the new blood, like one of the worst storylines ever. But he's like, bro, if you saw the WCW and the decline of WCW that they did on Vice, he's like, bro, that was legit a shoot, bro, because that's how it was in the locker room at the time, bro. So he wanted to base an angle off of that, but it made no sense because it's like, who the hell is going to believe that Billy Kidman is going to beat Hulk Hogan? Who in the hell? Who do you think Billy Kidman could go toe to toe with Kevin Nash? Like, what are we doing? Horace Hogan and all these people?
When we got Rey Mysterio versus Kevin Nash,
and Rey Mysterio unmasked, yes, which was stupid.
And he looked like a child.
He looked like a 12-year-old.
But you know what? Like, Rey didn't want to do it.
He has said many a times he didn't want to do it.
And you can tell, as soon as that mask comes up, you can tell he's heated.
That's why Rey said, like, when he got the offer to do WWE, and he's like, "Can I put my mask on?" He's like, "Yes." That's
he didn't like. He assumed it was going to be without the mask, and they said, "No,
you want Rey Mysterio Jr. We want you with the mask. We don't want the filthy animals Rey who's rapping with a Conan. we don't want that."
And playing to the racial stereotype.
Oh God, it was so bad. They were just off the rails in '99, 2000, and for me, like
you mentioned off the rails. Sorry to cut you up, but I gotta say it. West Texas rednecks.
I hate rap. Rap is crap.
You have the iconic Kurt Hennig.
Yes.
Who's from Minnesota.
Yes.
Trying to be like a redneck, like Texan,
Yeehaw.
And it's like, dude, he's not from Texas.
Then you had Barry Windham. You had Bobby Duncombe Jr. God rest his soul.
Wasn't Kendall Windham part of that too?
He might have been. I just remember Barry, Bobby Duncombe Jr., and Kurt Hennig, and they're going against the No Limit Soldiers, and this makes no fucking sense. Like you had Tank Abbott, who was this UFC fighter, and he's hanging out with 3 Count and like dancing to the 3 Count music, being like the groupie for 3 Count. You had Ralphus like competing in hardcore matches from being with Chris Jericho and the comedic.
He was a truck driver for WCW.
He drove the production truck, and he was a part of the crew, and whatever he did, he drove the truck. He drove the lighting truck. And Chris Jericho's like, "Hey, I want to make fun of Goldberg and all that. My security, you want to just do this?" And he's like, "Sure." And Ralphus, God rest his soul, who's no longer with us, after Jericho went to the WWF, Ralphus was competing in hardcore matches, and it made no damn sense.
I'm surprised they didn't make him WCW champion.
Oh, God. You had Brian Knobbs, the head of the WCW Hardcore Championship Division. You had Eric Bischoff beating Terry Funk for the Hardcore title. You had a lot of decisions that were just very rash and just balls to the wall and just nuts. You had NWO Wolfpack against the NWO. You had so many just facocketed bullshit all over the place, out of this world stories that made no sense. And I mean, for me, when you close the doors and you look back at WCW, and I mean, it's sad, like Daniel mentioned, but it's a lineage and a legacy that you can now see under the WWE auspices on the Peacock or wherever you get your networks, so to speak. And fucking, yeah, that was the end of WCW. It was just a lot of mismanagement. It was a lot of egos, and it was just a lot of crap, to be completely honest with you. It was a lot of crap.
Yeah. It was just god awful. It's sad what had happened, and
Can we also just bring up to the fact that Vince McMahon legitimately fired Jeff Jarrett right on the air when he fought WCW? He fired Jeff Jarrett, and he did it proudly.
Because Jeff Jarrett basically walked out on him.
He did, and he took great pride in firing Jeff Jarrett now that he bought WCW.
And now, who's the only one left in wrestling now?
Oh, yes. Jeff Jarrett.
And I still remember, I think it was one of the last, like, just some of the matches that were there. We had Booker T versus Scott Steiner. Booker T at the time was the WCW US champion. Steiner was the WCW champion.
And Booker won.
Booker won. And which I don't understand why they didn't make it a winner take all, but Scott Steiner's title was the only one on the line. Okay.
You had Sugar Shane Helms beat Chavo Guerrero for the Cruiserweight title. They had that match, which was good. You had the infamous Ric Flair Sting match that was 9 minutes, and it was nice. It was for a nostalgia purpose. It was cool, but the match was terrible.
I mean, Rick has even said at that time he was not
into it.
He wasn't in a good place.
He wasn't. He didn't want to be there, and he was just like, all right, I'll do it just because I'm wrestling Sting, and I love Sting, but is it going to be a great match or no? It was just a random TV. It was just a TV match for 9 minutes.
I mean, you want a good sense of it. Ric Flair came out in the robe and a t-shirt.
Yeah, he came out in a WCW t-shirt. That's right. And the robe.
He didn't feel confident. He even said it, It wasn't until, he went to WWE, Triple H worked with him, and Triple H basically reminded him, you're Ric Flair.
Like,
be Ric Flair.
Like, I mean, if you look at Flair in, like, 2002, and he's going against Vince, he's going against The Undertaker. Like, The Undertaker was the best match there thus far. And then you get to, like, later in 2002 when he's with Triple H, and then the evolution starts. You see Rick start to get that confidence back.
Yeah. Like, his match with Vince was good.
It was. The match with Taker was good. I was there at SummerSlam 2002 when he wrestled Jericho, and that was good. The match with Eddie Guerrero at King of the Ring, but other than that, and also for me, because we remember at that time when Stone Cold walked out, and it was supposed to be Stone Cold and Eddie Guerrero, but then Ric Flair turned babyface out of nowhere. we got Ric Flair and Eddie Guerrero.
But let's circle on back. So WCW, we assume it is just gone.
Done. Yep.
And then I believe the first shot, we had, I think it was, we had the Vince versus Shane thing, which, not outside the realm of possibility, but I remember Mike Awesome showing up.
Before we get to that, can I just, I don't mean to catch up. Can I just mention Vince versus Shane here? So the build to the Vince versus Shane match with Mick Foley as a special guest referee, I will never forgive your mother for giving birth to you. And then we get to the match, and it's one of my favorite WrestleMania matches. Linda's in the coma. Trish slaps Stephanie, and they have the brawl. And you see in the crowd like Sean Stasiak and Stacy Keibler and all these WCW talents are in the skybox watching Shane. And Shane and Vince have this epic match, and then Vince is about to hit him with the trash can. Linda rises from the chair, the low blow, and the infamous coast to coast Van Terminator with the trash can. Shane wins. I gotta say, that's one of my favorite WrestleMania moments. How awesome was that match?
Oh yeah, for as much of a detestable human being as Vince McMahon is,
yes,
and he is.
Now, on a sidebar, Daniel Crimmins, I have to ask you, my amigo, are you going to watch the Netflix series at the end of the month?
Yeah.
I'm looking I'm looking forward to it, folks, is I'm interested to see how they're going to go into the sexual allegations.
It's produced by the people that produced Tiger King, if that tells you anything.
Oh, okay, fair enough. And for those who have seen Tiger King, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah. Tiger King. Because of course. And there's just that. And they have reused the club numerous times. Not lately. Can't imagine why. But we have Shane hitting the Van Terminator. And you know what? To their credit, we have Shane the dives, jumping off Hell in a Cell, all that. He's a millionaire. He doesn't have to do any of that. I mean, I think Shane's an adrenaline junkie.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Vince never had to do any of that.
No, and I mean, this was like, if you really look at it, like as far as like a wrestling perspective, if I remember correctly, and you can correct me on this, Daniel, like WrestleMania 17 was like Vince's like first like official match at WrestleMania.
I think so, one of them.
That was one of them against Shane, and then WrestleMania 19 with Hogan, the bloody match that was.
We don't talk about that one.
I know. And then we get to WrestleMania, 26.
I'll say it. WrestleMania 9, or not 9, WrestleMania 19, to me, is one of the worst.
Daniel hates that one so much. He's watched every WrestleMania.
So many horrible booking decisions in that one. But hey, you know what? You're gonna have to wait until next season, folks, to watch that one.
Ooh, okay. How about Vince and Shawn at WrestleMania 22? That was good.
Let's not forget Vince and Shane versus Shawn Michaels and God.
That was right after that at Backlash.
That happened.
That happened.
Folks, I'm not kidding. That did happen. Where Mike and I, we joke on this show, but we didn't joke about this. I wish we did.
I can't, because I'm Catholic. He's Catholic. I can't. I wasn't laughing. It wasn't funny to me. Even as
tasteless.
I was 14 at the time, and I'm like, dude, I can't do this. Like, this is awful. Like, why? And I mean,
Vince is going to hell anyways.
He is. And I mean, the worst Vince McMahon WrestleMania matchup, folks, of course, WrestleMania 26, Bret Hart. Or even worse, Vince and Pat McAfee a couple of years ago. That goes up there. That's up there.
That was worse than the Bret Hart match.
That was even worse than Bret Hart, absolutely. And then Vince taking that fucking stunner and he
and just falling.
God damn it, Steve! You're coming back. I'm gonna come. The man is certifiably nuts. Anyway, back to the story we were talking about. Sorry. So 2001, Vince and Shane. That's the start of this. I know on WCW.
And you think it's going to be the end? That's it.
That's it at Mania, and then no, it doesn't.
And randomly, I think it was. I remember it being summertime. I think it was like June, because I remember school being out.
Yes, it was in June of 01. Yep.
And you just see it was a hardcore title match. I think
Rhino and Test.
That's what it was. And then you just see Mike Awesome randomly show up
and hit them with like the fucking, what was it, like a pipe or something? Like, if I remember, or whatever the hell it was, a 2x4.
I think so. I think it was a pipe, and wins the hardcore title.
Literally, Awesome bombs Rhino right on a freaking ladder and wins the hardcore title.
And you're just like, oh, okay.
What? Like Madison Square Garden, Mike Awesome wins the hardcore title. Oh, but
that chick Thriller, Mike Awesome.
And that Mike Awesome. But they had like a lot of debuts too, like Lance Storm coming in and super kicking Albert. Hugh Morris moonsaulting, the best moonsault ever on Edge. Like, for me, like, I know you could get the big names, and we'll get to that here, Daniel, in our timeline, but did you like the fact that we got debuts like Mike Awesome, Lance Storm, and Hugh Morris?
Yeah. I mean, I was always a fan of Bill DeMott, Hugh Morris, General Erection.
Even though he's a dickhead?
Yeah, even though he's a horrible human being.
Yes.
And a bully. I liked him in WCW.
He was funny. He was entertaining.
A big guy like that is not supposed to be able to hit a moonsault.
And it was a nice moonsault. He hit that with perfection.
Big Show used to do a moonsault.
Big Show used to do a drop kick and a kip up.
Years ago, folks. And, I remember seeing this. So I know this isn't any Mandela effect bullshit. Big Show, when he was in WCW as a Giant, used to do a moonsault. Didn't do it often, but he did it.
When he did it, it was a sight to see.
Just look at him.
Ain't I a sight to see? Rob fucking Conway.
But I liked it. I thought it was nice, seeing, like, I always liked some of these guys. I was a big Lance Storm fan.
If I could
be serious for a moment.
Yes, if I could be serious for a minute.
And he won almost every WCW title and renamed it to like a Canadian province.
The Canadian province, yes.
Like, you had the Saskatchewan hardcore title.
Yes. Lance Storm, that was a Vince Russo thing. Bro, this guy, Lance Storm, bro, we're going to give him all the titles, bro.
They should have given him the world title.
He was so good, but the problem was his personality was terrible. He didn't have any personality. And then they made him dance in WWE. They made that man dance and do the cabbage patch.
Let's not forget what WWE did to Dean Malenko.
Well, they made him and Lita have an affair. Not like an affair, but make him like be obsessed with Lita and that.
And they gave him that ladies' man gimmick. Give him like a James Bond style theme and entrance video.
That fucking theme, yes.
Make him the Iceman.
No, they made Dean like he was. They had a thing for Lita. Him and Perry Saturn were getting the girls. Like, yeah, they made him like a ladies' man. I'm like, Dean fucking Malenko.
Stinko Malenko.
And I like Dean. I really do. But he was another one. His personality sucked. Very good wrestler. One of the greatest wrestlers ever. And I firmly believe that.
One of the most underrated technical wrestlers of all time.
And it's a shame what he's going through now. Like, for real. With he has Parkinson's, right?
I think so, yeah.
God, like, that's so sad to see Dean now. Like, that Dean Malenko. Oh, your favorites, folks. But no, that's
one of the absolute best to ever do it.
Agreed wholeheartedly. And I mean, yeah, around this time too, like you go from seeing those three debut and then you get to, and I'll say this, we mentioned it in one of our shows, the King of the Ring match with Kurt Angle and Shane. And we're going to get to a certain matchup on Raw in a minute, but Kurt Angle and Shane, and like Shane's still, doing the WCW stuff and he's getting people over and he's bringing the talent in, he's bringing in Stacy Keibler and all these people. And then friggin' Shane is like, you know what, Kurt, you know what, then maybe it's not the three eyes. Maybe just, you're just a wussy. Kurt Angle's a big wussy, and then he angle slams him off the podium, and it was like one of the best angle slams ever. And then him and Shane have that iconic street fight at the King of the Ring.
That pissed Vince off.
The wussy, the angle slam, Kurt Angle putting him in the ankle lock, Shane hitting him with a chair. Like, that led to this barn burner of a freaking match that you're thinking, okay, it's going to be nuts. But I didn't think it was going to be this nuts. And he's hitting him with the friggin' board and the shooting star presses and the trash.
And he tries to do it through the one panel. It doesn't break.
And it doesn't break. And then Shane's like, do it again. God damn it. I'm going through it. And then it doesn't break again. And then Kurt just flings him right into the friggin' thing. And then it breaks.
And it broke that time.
And then Kurt has to belly to belly him back through. Doesn't break. Tries to go it again. Doesn't break. And then Kurt just wings him back through it again. Broke that time.
And if I remember right, didn't Kurt also compete in the King of the Ring tournament?
So here's what the best part about this. Shane tried to get him blown up, which was so smart. He wrestled Christian. He beats Christian. Then he wrestles Edge in the final. And then Shane costs Kurt. He hits him with a spear. And then he just runs through the crowd. Like, he's trying to really piss off Kurt while also blow him up so he can have an advantage in the street fight. It was great. Like, the whole setup for that match was awesome.
So this was the year that Edge won, right?
Yes, this was the year the Edge won. Yep. And if you want to see our best and worst King of the Rings, check out our last episode, ladies and gentlemen. This was also around the time when DDP was, all right, this also applies. DDP came in and he was the stalker of The Undertaker, and him and Taker had that brawl at King of the Ring. It wasn't even a match because Taker didn't want to have a wrestling match with him. They had a brawl and he absolutely squashed him and made him famous, quote unquote.
With Undertaker's ex-wife, Sarah.
I want my Sarah. So bad.
And they had her on TV for a while.
They had Sarah beat DDP thanks to The Undertaker in a match on Raw. DDP got absolutely buried when he came in. And of course, him and Kanyon were the WWF World Tag Team Champions. And then them and Taker and Kane had that SummerSlam tag match in a cage. And they absolutely got squashed. It was so... Ooh.
And you had Undertaker and Kane as the WCW Tag Team Champions.
You had the Hardys as the WCW Tag Team Champions. You had the Dudleys as the WCW Tag Team Champions. You had a lot of mixture of the WWF guys holding WCW gold. And one other thing I have to mention from this time period, we talk about names that they brought in. Sean O'Haire and Chuck Palumbo. What were your thoughts of them bringing them in as the WCW Tag Champs?
I love those guys in WCW.
They were great. Like, they were a great tag team.
God rest Chuck. God rest Sean O'Haire's soul.
Yeah, Palumbo actually looks very good now. For those who've seen Palumbo now, he looks good.
He's happily retired.
He's like, I'll make my motorcycles and I'm happy. That's Chuck Palumbo.
I don't think he misses it.
No, Like, why would you? Like, he had the prime of his career with the Billy and Chuck angle. He was in the FBI with Nunzio and Stamboli, and then he had a good career. Like,
made his money and was like,
I'm done. I'm done. But yeah, that was then he came back into the whole I ride my motorcycles, but I'm not the Undertaker. Like the motorcycle gimmick with him, Michelle McCool, and Jamie Noble, and then he got fired again. Did you like the motorcycle gimmick?
Yeah, it wasn't bad.
It was all right. I mean, he had a great theme song. You will remember me. Oh, but what were your thoughts on O'Haire and Palumbo? And
highly underutilized, but you know what they had in WCW, because I remember initially it was Mark Jindrak and Sean O'Haire.
Yes.
It was Chuck Palumbo, and I forget who he teamed with.
I don't know. I cannot remember. I remember O'Haire and Jindrak. I cannot remember who Palumbo teamed with, but
I remember a thing where like there was like a gimmick where they swapped partners.
Yes, I remember. Didn't they wrestle like Kevin Nash and DDP?
Something like that.
Yeah.
But we digress. But there was one match, a Monday Night Raw match.
Okay.
I think you know the one I'm talking about, Mike.
I do. But before we get to it, can I just mention, what were your thoughts? We mentioned Madison Square Garden earlier, and I know we're bouncing all over the place, but this ties in.
It's what we do.
It's what we do.
If you haven't realized that, folks, by now,
it's not that we have short attention spans. It's just we go off a little bit.
Well, I kind of do.
Yeah, you do. But I join in the fun, man. It's what we do. We love wrestling. I'll pay you. We love wrestling. I love wrestling. So back to the invasion. So I had to ask you, because we mentioned Madison Square Garden with Mike Awesome and the power and the Awesome Bomb on the ladder. This was also, I believe, the same night that Booker T debuted at the King of the Ring and literally sidewalk slammed Stone Cold through the table and hurt his fucking back. Not intentionally. It was an accident, but the monitor and all that hit Stone Cold and he hurt his back, and he forgave Booker, but he was still pissed at the time. So they have Booker come out in Madison Square Garden. He scissor kicks Vince McMahon and runs out the building. Like, what were your thoughts on him? First of all, his debut of Stone Cold through the table at King of the Ring, and then he friggin' axe kicks, scissor kick to Vince.
They could have done so much more with Booker T debuting. It shouldn't have been like that.
What, just him attacking Stone Cold and then attacking Vince?
Yeah.
And then he immediately loses the WCW Championship to The Rock.
And again, like WWE guys winning every WCW title. Like Kurt Angle had the WCW World title.
Yeah, he beat Booker T, and then Booker T won it right back.
He had the U.S. title for a brief period, for like a day or a week.
Yeah, he beat Rhino, and then I think Edge beat him, if I remember correctly. Yeah,
something like that.
But then Edge and Test had that friggin' unification match at Survivor Series that year, which we'll get to Survivor Series. But yeah, Edge and Test was very weird, like that, like stuff like that. You saw, and you saw Test and Booker T win the WWF World Tag Team titles. You had a mixture and a plethora. You had. All right, I'm going to say this once just because we mentioned Taker and Kane before. Taker and Chronic is probably one of the worst ever matches of that year. The Taker and Chronic Unforgiven 01 with Stevie Richards as their manager. Okay. The reason behind it was the Undertaker beat up the Right to Censor, and that was the end of the Right to Censor. So Steven's like, I'm going to get my revenge on Undertaker by managing Chronic. And that match was the drizzling shits. You see Undertaker yell, "God damn it," because they fucked up a move. And you could tell he was pissed the entire match.
And those were his friends.
And those are his buddies. Like, he was buddies with Brian Adams and Brian Clark. And I remember at the time they got released because they didn't want to go to developmental. I think
they were members of the BSK.
They were. Brian Adams was. Him and Brian Adams were tight. Brian Clark was up in the mix. And I mean, if you remember the crowd at that night, they were chanting Isaac Yankem at Kane, because the match was just the drizzling shits, and they thought the two big guys, Undertaker's boys, and then Kane in the mix, but it didn't click. And I think Chronic at the time, like, everybody liked Chronic in WCW because they were just killers. But did you like the introduction of Chronic and how it just kind of like dwindled down after that match?
No, I thought it was stupid. Like, to me, they were essentially WCW's answer to Demolition.
Here comes the axe. Here comes the smasher.
Song sung by Rick Derringer, who also did Real American.
I am a real American.
Brother.
Want to body slam Kamala, dude? What the fuck is wrong with you, Hulk? Like, if it wasn't the RNC, now he wants to body slam Kamala.
And then he even said, he realizes he said it. He's like,
I'm gonna get
brothers, I might get in trouble for that one. He said, it wasn't me, it was the beer talking.
No, Hulk, it's you shithead.
Are we really surprised?
No,
really?
No. Oh my God, no. I'm not shocked. Fucking Hulk Hogan's dumbass. With everything that Hulk's done outside of wrestling over the years with Nasty Nick, dude. Yes, I'm not shocked. Not at all.
I'm not. No.
What?
No.
What?
Back to the show.
Okay, okay, fine. So Chronic was terrible. They were gone right after that. I think what also pissed me off around this time is, like, I like Christian Edge a lot, whether they're singles or a team, and they had Christian turn on him. He's jealous. Okay, fine. He wins the Intercontinental title at Unforgiven. Cool. But then we get to No Mercy in the ladder match, and Edge wins it back. So when Edge wins it back, of course. But my issue here, dude, is Christian did not need to join the alliance in that. They really didn't. Like, oh, my mom's in the hospital, yada, yada, yada. It's like, it was no hospital. The mistake was, and the accident was, that she gave birth to you, and they did that storyline where Christian took out Edge and he joined the alliance. Like, did Christian need to be in the alliance to have that feud? No. Isn't that kind of when it goes off the rails when they're putting him in the alliance and he doesn't need to be in the alliance?
It's the same thing with the NWO. You had people that didn't need to be there.
But you put him in there. Like, look at NWO 2002. You didn't need Booker T in the fucking NWO. But they did it anyway.
Yeah.
Goldust tried to get into the NWO because Dusty Rhodes used to be in the NWO. You didn't need it.
And, but I think, Mike, we're at the point in the show where we need to discuss that match.
Okay. Yes, I know. We'll get back to it. Thank you.
And I'll let you talk about that match.
You're going to let me take it away? You're going to let me take it away? So, Booker T and Buff the Stuff Bagwell have a match. The WCW portion of the show, and it was, if I remember correctly, Scott Hudson and Arn Anderson were the WCW announce team at the time. If I remember that correctly, they had Scott Hudson. Okay, so it was Scott Hudson and Arn Anderson.
Because they didn't want to pay Tony Schiavone.
They didn't want to pay Tony Schiavone. I'll pay you, Tony! So they didn't want to pay Tony Schiavone. We get the match. Buff comes out, and him and Booker T have one of the most boring matches in the history of Raw, and it was just the shits. It ended in a no contest because Stone Cold and Kurt Angle beat up Booker and Buff Bagwell. They stuffed Buff Bagwell out the door, and he got absolutely mollywopped. And
then he got fired the next day.
Then he got fired, but also he had that incident with Shane Helms at the, while they were training in the water bottle incident that he, Shane threw at him and he was bleeding. And if you ask Buff Bagwell, it's like he got in his face and then he threw the water bottle at him. And it's like, no, he was being a bully. And Shane's like, I threw it at him because he was being an asshole. And I believe the Hurricane more than I do Buff Bagwell. And if you ask Buff Bagwell, Jim Ross was the reason he got fired, not because his mom called, his mom called the WWF to not because he couldn't work on house shows. If you ask Buff Bagwell, it was because they ran into Tacoma, Washington, and the next week they were going to Atlanta, Georgia. They were sabotaging Buff Bagwell. No Buff. They needed a WCW match, and you were one of the hottest stars at that time in WCW. And Booker T was the champion. So they wanted to use a hot star in yourself and your character and your presentation against Booker T. And you shit the bed.
Couldn't have been Judy Bagwell.
No.
Former WCW Tag Team Champion.
God rest her soul. But no, it didn't work. And Buff, he looked good. He was in shape. But the problem was they didn't click. They didn't have a good match. And just they got rid of you. They didn't want to deal with you. Bye, Buff.
Bye.
But yeah, that matchup was just, I remember it being very boring, very slow, very plotting. And it wasn't Booker's fault. So,
yeah. I mean, it's sometimes things just don't work.
I mean, would you have liked to see more of Buff Bagwell in the WWF?
Yeah. Because the dude could talk.
And yes, we know, ladies and gentlemen, that he's in a better place now. He's off the drugs and whatnot.
And I'm happy for him.
I'm very happy for him. But this is dickhead Buff we're talking about here. We're talking about in our timeline dickhead Buff.
Yeah. He's not the guy that has gotten reformed with Scotty Riggs and are now the American males again.
American males.
What a terrible thing. Jimmy Hart, what the fuck?
American males. So yes.
Worst theme songs Should that be an episode we do, folks?
Let's do it. I'm for it. American males.
Let's do it.
Let's do it, like Shia LaBeouf. Can we also put in there, he's a man called Sting, a man called Sting.
Or Steiner Line.
Right a line. But yeah, no. So Buff Bagwell is gone. The people that they brought in around this time, like the Sean O'Hare's, the Chuck Palombos, the Mark Jindrak's, like everybody from that. I mean, you got ECW, and then I thought that was so cool that Paul Heyman brought back ECW with the Tommy Dreamers.
Let's talk about that night on Raw.
Yes. And
you see Vince isn't, Shane and the WCW guys are in the ring. And Shane says something like, I didn't come alone.
And here come the ECW guys.
You hear the ECW theme. And you see, I'm trying to remember, it was Taz, it was Tommy Dreamer,
Rob Van Dam,
the Dudleys.
Dudleys were in that. Yep, Dudleys.
I forget who else.
Rhino.
Is that Rhino?
A lot of them were in there. But you also had them turn on the WWF, and then Stephanie McMahon
just randomly comes out.
I now own ECW. All right. Shane announces Stephanie is the owner of ECW, and she wears the infamous hat that we all know, the ECW.
Paul Heyman's hat.
Which she wore at the Hall of Fame, which I thought was great.
That wasn't Paul Heyman's hat. She wore that infamous biker cap.
The biker cap that said ECW on it, yes. But I think the problem with that I had at the time, and Rob Van Dam said it, it's like, remember when he was going against Chris Jericho for the hardcore title and like Unforgiven and like towards the end of 01? Yeah. And they had like Stephanie was like a big cheerleader for Rob Van Dam. And Rob has said in interviews, like, he didn't feel comfortable because like you're trying to make her like my love interest. And it's like, no, no, I don't want to have like a love interest thing with Stephanie McMahon. Like, you remember that, right? It was kind of like supposed to be like that, like a little bit.
Yeah.
But it made no sense.
No, it did.
And you had like Stephanie being involved, which understood because, they're getting back at Dad. But I mean, if you really look at it, dude, like look at the Invasion pay-per-view in itself, probably one of the most incredibly amount of buys for a pay-per-view because everybody was so into it. The Team WWF against Team Alliance. I think that pay-per-view also featured Edge and Christian against Mike Awesome and Lance Storm.
It also featured Earl Hebner versus Nick Patrick.
I don't want to talk about that. I don't. It was so bad.
We have to, Mike. But you make me watch those shitty pay-per-views.
We're going to talk.
We discuss this shitty match.
All right. So the Invasion pay-per-view happens. I mentioned the tag match with Edge and Christian against Lance Storm and Mike Awesome. Fine. Billy Kidman and X-Pac. Fine. Tajiri against Taz. Fine. William Regal and Raven. Fine. Earl Hebner and Nick Patrick with Mick Foley as the special guest referee.
The match lasted all of 2 minutes and 50 seconds.
It was the shits. Nick Patrick took over, then he pissed off Mick Foley, mandible claw, Earl Hebner, I keep saying Eric. Earl Hebner spears Nick Patrick, 1, 2, 3. It was terrible. Then you had Tori Wilson and Stacy Keibler against Lita and Trish in the Bra and Panties tag. And just, it was, the show really was the big thing behind the Invasion thing was just Team WWF against Team Alliance. Like, did you like that pay-per-view as a whole? Because it was originally, if you remember, like they were originally supposed to do like Fully Loaded 01 after King of the Ring. But then the stuff happened, and then it turned into the Invasion. I don't remember why we never got Fully Loaded 01, but we got the Invasion to replace it, if you remember that.
And if I remember right, Tajiri never joined the Alliance.
No, Tajiri was at Regal. And then Regal joined the Alliance.
Because Tajiri was loyal to WWE.
Yes.
Or WWF at the time, because I think there was still WWF when this happened.
Yeah, they were still WWF, and then William Regal became the commissioner for the Alliance. All right.
We have the main event.
Yes.
Which was Team WCW ECW versus WWF. Team ECW and WCW was Booker T, Bubba Dudley, DDP, Devon, Rhino. And then WWF was Jericho, Kane, Angle, Stone Cold, and The Undertaker.
Now, here's my thing. The story for this was awesome because Stone Cold's at the bar. He just wants to hug Vince, and Vince, I want the old Stone Cold, not the Stone Cold that gives me hugs. If you want to see Stone Cold, give me a stunner. Give me a hell yeah. Give me a stunner, damn it. one of the best motivational promos of that year. And you see Stone Cold at the bar, and then he just comes out, hits people with the pool cue. He's stuttering everybody in the ring. One of the biggest.
You know, I didn't enjoy how often Stone Cold's theme music changed in this period because it changed like 4 or 5 times.
So he went from Disturbed with the Glass Shatters, which was a great theme song, and then he had that
and a couple variations of that.
Yes, like I didn't like how his theme changed either. Why couldn't he just have the Disturbed one? Why did it have to change?
And then, if I remember right, after Survivor Series that year, I think he went back to the old school.
Yeah,
and he's been with it ever since.
Yes, but there was a point where I really wish he just would have kept the Disturbed Glass Shatters because that was
that song.
That was perfect.
So we have that main event,
and Stone Cold joins the.
Stone Cold turns heel, hits Kurt Angle with the stunner.
Yes,
and then I forget who pinned Angle.
Booker T.
So Austin's heel again.
Yeah.
He was a face for all of a week.
A week? Yes. So you had him turn. Well, the turn at WrestleMania was the big thing besides Vince and Shane that really kind of also embroiled this. So he's a heel. He gets injured with Booker. Then they do the infamous him and Kurt Angle segments with Jimmy Crack Corn, I Don't Care, and Kurt Angle's wearing the cowboy hat. And they do the skits, which are hilarious. Because Steve can't really work. So then he heals up. We mentioned he comes back and rips ass on everybody, and he's a babyface. Then he turns a heel again because it was all a ruse. He turns on the WWF. And I'm just going to say this right now. One of my favorite matches of that time period, I think you can concur, because we mentioned the Rock and Booker T for the WCW title. The Stone Cold Kurt Angle match at SummerSlam 2001. My God. The bloodbath that Kurt Angle had. Like, that match from top to bottom, if you've never seen it, go back and watch it. Go back and watch it.
Kurt Angle, that dude could blade.
Oh, dude. Yeah.
Like the two, I think, honestly, him, Austin, and to me, Dusty Rhodes. And of course, Mick Foley.
Oh, of course. But I mean, I think with Kurt at the time too, dude, like he was really like, the gung-ho guy of the WWF. Like he was the face of that time period with him and Austin. He beats Austin for the title at Unforgiven in his hometown of Pittsburgh. And then you get him losing the title like a few weeks later back to Stone Cold thanks to Shane.
On a random Raw.
He loses the title back. And then he turns on the WWF to join the Alliance. And then it turns out he's the mole and he screws Stone Cold. And then that's the winner take all with the WWF at friggin' Survivor Series, which before we even get into that, what did you think of Vince at the end? That infamous, like, I won, goddammit, I won. What do you think?
Throwing the blazer down.
Just goddammit. Team WWF, goddammit. And that would be when Chris Jericho turned on The Rock and Team WWF and Jericho's heel turn.
Because he got eliminated first.
Yes. God, it just, for me, I also enjoyed, we mentioned Kurt in the turn and him turning on the Alliance and turn WWF to join the Alliance. And then he's the mole. But for me, dude, like the DDP could have been used so much better, like we mentioned. Rob Van Dam, here's my thing. He's a heel, right? He's a part of the Alliance. People still cheered him. They don't want to boo Rob Van Dam because he's cool. And he's Rob Van Dam. And he has that infamous match in Invasion with Jeff Hardy, which I loved because Mike Awesome wins the hardcore title. Jeff Hardy wins it. And then he loses it to Rob Van Dam. Then he wins it back from Rob Van Dam. Like, they did a lot of flip-flopping with the hardcore title. But, dude, that match at Invasion, like, people seeing the Van Terminator for the first time and the Van Daminator, like, people, like, are loving them some Rob Van Dam. That was, like, his really, like, coming out party for the WWF.
Yeah. It worked. And he ended up becoming one of their biggest stars in that period.
And, I mean, him, Stone Cold, and Kurt Angle main eventing No Mercy for the WWF title and then pushing Rob Van Dam as a big baby face. He got to wrestle The Undertaker that year for the hardcore title. Like, he was up there. And the fact that
earned Undertaker's respect.
Oh, dude, he was so good. And the fact that he didn't really hold the title until 5 years later after this is just a crime. Like, a lot of people, we mentioned this during the Reign of Terror, like he should have beaten Triple H for that title because he was so white hot at the time.
A lot of people should have beaten Triple H for a title.
Booker T, I'm looking at you.
Sucker.
But no, dude, There was a lot of superstars that could have been utilized better. We mentioned the Rock.
Exactly. I think part of the problem, the reason that I think the invasion angle in itself, while it had its good aspects, I think largely it was a dud because you didn't have the big names. You didn't have your Hogan, your Hall, your Nash, your Goldberg, your Sting, Luger. Like, you didn't have any of them.
You had the B
because they were locked under, Time Warner deals. Because for some reason, when you worked with WCW, you weren't signed with WCW. You were signed through AOL Time Warner.
Right. And they just sat on their ass for a year and collected the money.
Well, you're getting paid for that.
Yeah. I mean, if would you would want to sit on your ass and get paid for that. Fuck
you had gold. Like, do I think the invasion angle could have been better with, Goldberg or with, actually, no, because, well, fuck Bill Goldberg. Let me tell you about Bill Goldberg. Yes, I said Bill Goldberg.
Still so fucking funny. It's so good.
So bitter.
Still better. But to add on to your point, like we mentioned, Rob Van Dam could have been used better. DDP could have been used better. Like, I think DDP after this, he was like European champion.
And he was the motivational speaker.
That's
not a bad thing.
That's a good thing.
The cheesy smile.
But yeah, like, and I also have to add on to your point, like, we mentioned the winner take all, like, Team WWF wins. I mean, that's Survivor Series as well. We mentioned Edge and Test, bye-bye to the U.S. title until 2003. You had a lot of matches on there, like the Hardys and the Dudleys, and then the Hardys and the Dudleys in the cage match. And I'm going to ask you, because it was terrible, did you like how they had Matt turn on Jeff and then they wrestled at Vengeance? Like, the Hardy Boys breaking up made no damn sense at that time.
It was WWE and it was Vince. A lot of things didn't make any sense.
Yeah, and I mean, you had Stone Cold turning baby.
Test losing to Edge and then entering into the
Immunity Battle Royal. He can get fired. I forgot. Yes, the Immunity Battle Royal.
And they made a gimmick out of it, and it was like, okay, this is stupid.
And then they never did it again. They never did it again. But can you also agree, like, I don't mean to cut you off, but like Stone Cold afterwards, like, he's a babyface again. The consortium was me. Woo! And now you and I are partners.
And doing the
and then he fires Paul Heyman, and they carry Paul Heyman back, and then Jerry Lawler comes back on the commentary after he had quit because they fired the cat.
And let's not forget Jim Ross beating up Paul Heyman.
Like, he's like smacking him on the back.
And he's hitting him.
Like, really hard. You son of a bitch. Come on, you son of a bitch. There's some pluses to this because it gave us these moments, but yes.
I honestly think Paul Heyman probably told him, Jim, hit me.
Okay, now I got to mention Paul in this because we're talking about Survivor Series and the end and the aftermath, but how can we not? Like, you mentioned me segueing to the match with Booker and Buff Bagwell, right? I'm going to flip the script on you, my Daniel Crimmins. The infamous pipe bomb promo before we had Punk. The pipe bomb promo that he cut on Vince before the Survivor Series. Oh my God. Talk about it.
I love it because he spoke from the heart. How basically there'd be no WWF without ECW. And it's Paul Heyman. Arguably, people say that Paul Heyman, that Triple H is a good mind, and Vince is a smart businessman.
Mm-hmm.
Good wrestling minded. Yeah. I would argue that Paul Heyman is the true genius.
I mean, when he's talking about, like, your father would be ashamed of you, you ran all their businesses out of the territories, you put them out of business, and your father wanted to work with everybody, and you just wanted to run everybody out of business. Sandman was drinking beers, Stone Cold was drinking beers in ECW. You made Taz a joke, and then made him a commentator and a shell of his former self. Like, he ripped into Vince. If you've never seen that promo, and Paul said many years, he's like, don't you even care what I want to say? Vince, just make me, is it going to make me money? Yes. Well, make me money, God damn it. So he had no idea what Paul was going to say. And he, to his credit, stood there and let Paul just say whatever the hell he wanted to say to him. And he took it. And that led to, again, we mentioned the winner take all, the Team WWF wins. And then even after this, like we mentioned, Paul Heyman getting fired. And then he would come back to, of course, manage Brock Lesnar. But can I just say about Taz, like during this time period with Taz, like he really did nothing after this. I remember him and Spike Dudley won the tag titles, and then Taz was on commentary not too long after that. They did much with Taz after that. And he kind of
Well,
just
I think Taz's injuries had
well, the
finally
neck,
caught up with him.
yeah, I mean, he had a bad neck. Which can I just say, Taz choking out Brian Keith at AEW All In made me smile. That made me smile a lot to see Taz get involved with his son. That was cool. But yeah, like if you look at it, man, like it helped a lot of careers. It gave Booker T probably. Would you say Booker T was probably the best thing that came out of it? Because his career took off after the invasion. Like everybody else,
One of the only things that came out.
The only thing that happened is we gave us Booker T and Rob
Sucker.
Van Dam. Sucker and Rob Van Dam, of course. But yeah, it was a dud from the perspective of you had the B and C team, to put it in the nicest of ways, come from WCW. You didn't have the high main eventers like we mentioned, like Hogan and Scott Hall and Kevin Nash didn't come back until a year later. Goldberg didn't come into WWE until
actually a couple months later.
A couple months later? Yes, you're correct.
So this whole thing went from like June of 01 to November of 01. And then NWO didn't show up until February of 02. Yeah. So we're talking about 3 months.
Yeah, 3 months. Thank you. So they didn't come until 02. Steiner came in November of 02.
And we're not going to talk about those matches again.
No, we're not. I'm not going to make him watch the match again. We can go back and listen to our earlier seasons, folks. Then Steiner came in 03. You're welcome. Steiner
and then disappeared shortly thereafter.
Got released a year later. Goldberg came in 03 and then left a year later. that fucking run, good God. But yeah, it was one of those things where it was a time in professional wrestling history that we talk about 23 years later, even though it only lasted from June to November, and it had really nothing that came up of it except for Vince McMahon wanted to say, I bought you, I now own you, and I'm going to embarrass you like you embarrassed me. It was Vince in a way kind of being petty to a degree. Correct.
Ric Flair would later even say that when he found out how much Vince bought it for,
yes,
he was sick because he had the money.
And he could have, again, that was actually an interesting episode for a future episode, how Ric Flair would book WCW. There you go. If Ric Flair was to, all right, we're putting the creative juices.
He'd probably still be the WCW World Champion.
Oh, dear God. Woo!
Actually, no, Charlotte would probably be the WCW champion.
God, I can't crap on Charlotte now, man. She's cool with me now. She's cool. I like Charlotte. I like Charlotte. I like Charlotte. But no, that's what we had.
Andrade likes Charlotte.
Oh, I'm trying. You lucky son of a bitch, Andrade. But no, that's the thing, folks. It's when you look at it from where it started with Shane and Vince in April, that led to the invasion to June, and you have Stephanie McMahon coming involved with ECW and the kids going after their father. Like there was storytelling to it, but it wasn't good storytelling because it was just a way to bury the competition because Vince got his rocks off that he now owns them, and I'm the only game in town. Until TNA came around and Ring of Honor in 2002, and they started their early years. But yeah, that's pretty much the invasion in a nutshell. And then afterwards, we mentioned Stone Cold Babyface, Kurt Angle as a heel, lining with Vince on that Raw with Flair that we mentioned, and Stone Cold coming out and stunnering everybody. And poor Paul Heyman getting fired, and Jerry Lawler coming back. But of course, the $1 billion princess tried to not get fired, and then they carried her out of the ring. Get this woman out of my ring! God damn it. And then they carried Stephanie out. And then we didn't see her until 02 with Chris Jericho. And then she got fired again after losing that triple threat match with Triple H and Jericho. And then she would become the general manager of SmackDown.
And then the rest was history.
So all in all, the invasion, looking at about 23 years later, I know there was not much to say because it was only a few months, but looking at it in hindsight, do you think that memorable moment in history, mainly bad, that outweighed the good? But it's definitely something that will go down in history and annals of wrestling history.
Oh yeah,
it had a nice start, but then it got really ruined quickly.
It's like it could have been so much better, but
it had potential.
I think it was really hampered by not having, the big names.
That was really the thing. And you didn't have Bischoff. That was another thing. You didn't have Bischoff. It's just, and it sucks because, like, I've said this to you. We mentioned here, I like Stone Cold Kurt Angle. The Rock was fun with the Booker T stuff. The promos were funny, but also at the same time too. Can we even mention Sting here? Because if you remember Sting in the TNA and his DVD, he said one of the reasons why I didn't go to WWE is I was watching Rock and Booker T, and The Rock goes, "Who are you?" to Booker T, and he's like, "I know where I would stand if I would have went at that time," and he's correct. He's 100% correct in that.
I mean, it's even said like Vince didn't want to bring Sting in, and when he did, and he thought, people aren't going to remember him.
Oh, they remembered him.
And I remember the pop when Sting finally debuted.
And he takes him out at Triple H out at Survivor Series in 2014.
Which I still don't like that music.
And then that.
They couldn't have gotten the rights to the Crow Sting theme from WCW.
I don't know. But yeah, that was the theme that. And then the Crow, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for his run, even in WWE, even as short as it was and as unfortunate as it was, I still say I love that Triple H. I like the match for the nostalgia, but I hate the match because of who won. I hate the
Triple H wanted to lose.
But God damn it, we're gonna do the nostalgia, and we're gonna.
He wanted to bury WCW again.
God damn it, gonna have Triple H win. God damn it.
But Triple H wanted to lose.
He did, and I respect that. But he was just like, all right, the old man wants me to win. The old man wants me to win.
And then we got, Sting in the random Raw match where I think he teamed with,
Cena.
Was Cena, was it?
I think it was Cena, yeah. And they fought the Authority, yeah. And then Sting and Seth, which I enjoyed their match until he got hurt.
Which, should Sting have won that?
No.
And then maybe lose it right back to Seth?
Maybe, but no, I think he should have lost. I think he would have done the honors and favors, much as it was, but it was a freak accident. And I mean, for his short tenure, it was great to see him.
And he's even said he doesn't hold Seth responsible.
No. Well, I got to say as an aside, because this does tie in. Did you like him coming back at Wembley to help Darby?
Yeah.
That's cool. Ugh.
I mean, I'm a sucker for Sting.
Yeah, but I've always said this, and I mean, we'll say this about the invasion because as we close out onto our thing, and we hope you enjoy. But mainly, it's if you didn't have the main players, you had the B and the C team. Rob Van Dam was a plus out of it. Booker T was a plus out of it. It gave us, WWF superstars holding WCW gold, which really didn't make a lot of sense, and it was just stupid. It was just a way to bury It was just a way to bury WCW, mainly WCW and ECW. But I mean, they tried, and Paul Heyman did his darndest. That promo, it was what it was, folks. I mean, it had potential. It had legs to grow with Shane being the owner and bringing in Stacy Keibler and all these facets of people, like we mentioned, the Skybox within WrestleMania. It gave us Shane and Kurt. But other than that, it was like a huge dud. It really was. What could have been something cool turned into shit.
Drizzling shits.
Drizzling shits. But what's not drizzling shits is this show. And we hope you enjoyed this show and our professional wrestling analysis of the invasion and just reminiscing about 2001, end of WCW, owned by WWE, and what we got for the 4 or 5, 6 months that we got this storyline. And speaking of story and storytellers, one of the great storytellers is who we're going to feature in our next episode. Scott Hall, What Could Have Been. Hey, yo.
God rest his soul.
So we're going to look at Scott from his WWF run, WCW. We'll even talk some TNA, but just the fact that Scott...
We'll mention Vinny Vegas.
Yeah. We're going to mention the trials and tribulations because what could have been if he could have just stayed on that path. But there's a lot to encompass with Scott Hall. So we'll dive deep into Scott Hall next episode. We hope you enjoyed this one. And when we get to our finale, it's going to be a big one and you will acknowledge us. There's our hint. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So with that being said, Daniel Crimmins, before we close this out, let us know what's going on with the Pile Driver Pundit and the TSK. Go ahead.
Pundit is coming back. Should be recording within the next day or two. Kicking it with the TSK, we just recorded a all in a lot. I don't know.
All in. Yeah.
Yeah, that one. We just did that one, I think it was last week or so.
Mm-hmm.
So that's up. I might be up. I'm not 100% positive. But good shot. I believe we're doing All Out next week. I don't know for sure, but we'll see.
Well, I will say this. Follow Daniel's Power Driver Pundit YouTube channel and follow the TSK doing their thing on the Max Wrestling YouTube channel. If you want to follow Daniel on Instagram and see cat photos and just a badass D. Crimmins one. If you want to follow me, SM Show 1 or MCL92 on Twitter, Stephen Mike Show, LFCfights.com, Larkin_92, M Larkin MB on Instagram. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Mike Larkin 92. 966 subscribers. We're almost there. We're getting to 1,000, folks. Let's get to 1K and enjoy our zaniness. Maybe you might like it, maybe you're not. But the main thing is you're interacting with us and you comment, you like, you subscribe, and do the damn thing.
Click the bell.
Click the freaking bell so you can see these faces. This face, that face, and listen to us talk some wrestling and go off the rails as we do because we love professional wrestling and it's a good time to be a professional wrestling fan. So with that being said, for Daniel Crimmins, my name is Mike Larkin. Thank you so much for listening to another edition of Uncaged. And the final thing I'll say is one thing that we forgot to mention that also came out that was good about the invasion. You know what that is?
What?
Let the bodies hit the floor. Let the bodies hit the floor.
I remember.
Drowning pool, baby. So let the bodies hit the floor. Let the podcast keep on going on and on to the break of dawn. And we'll see you in episode 9. See you later, folks.